I don't say this at the start of every reading, or I try not to, because gratitude that sounds rehearsed stops meaning anything, but today it feels necessary to say it differently. What I've been given in this community is not just people who watch or listen, it's people who come back, who carry what they hear into their actual lives and then return with the evidence of what happened. That kind of sustained trust is something I hold with both hands. I don't take it lightly, not for a single reading, and certainly not for this one. Because what I'm about to tell you about tomorrow is not something I'm willing to rush through. So settle in, listen carefully. That's not just the title, that's the instruction. You know, the particular quality of silence that exists in a house at 4 in the morning? Not peaceful silence, not the silence of rest. The other kind, the wide awake kind, when the rest of the world is under and you're not, and the darkness has a texture to it that the daytime never produces. The silence where things you've been too busy to hear during the hours of ordinary noise begin to surface. Thoughts you didn't know you were having, feelings you'd successfully outrun all day. The particular clarity that arrives only when everything else has finally stopped competing for your attention. That silence is what I'm asking you to bring to this reading. Because what I'm looking at, what has been assembling itself in your field since I began sitting with this, is something that requires a specific quality of listening, not the casual kind. The kind where you actually stop the part of your mind that's already preparing its response and you let what's being said reach you before you decide what to do with it. Something is coming tomorrow through a person in words you were not expecting to hear from that direction. And the way you receive it, the quality of attention you bring to the moment when it arrives, is going to determine how much of it you actually get to keep. Let me show you what I'm seeing. There is a person in your near orbit who has been carrying something that belongs to you. Not metaphorically. I mean, there is specific information, specific knowledge, specific awareness of something that is directly relevant to your life and your situation and the decisions you have either made or are in the process of making that this person has been holding. Not forever, not with malicious intent, but for long enough that the holding has become uncomfortable. Long enough that the weight of knowing something that the relevant person doesn't know has shifted from being manageable to being a kind of quiet ethical burden. This person is not who you'd expect. That keeps landing as the thing I most need to say before anything else, because your mind, when you hear that someone is going to tell you something tomorrow, is already doing what Virgo's mind always does, already running the probability calculations, already sorting through the likely candidates, already constructing the most plausible scenario so that you can arrive at the moment having already partially processed it. I know that reflex, it's not wrong. It's how you move through the world. But this time the source is going to surprise you. The channel through which this arrives is not the one you'd have identified if I'd asked you to predict it. And that surprise, the mild disorientation of information coming from an unexpected direction, is something I want to prepare you for so that the surprise doesn't cause you to underweight what you're hearing, so that you don't, in the first moment of unexpected source confusion, dismiss or minimize something that deserves your full and careful attention. Whoever speaks tomorrow, receive them, regardless of whether they're the person you would have chosen to hear this from. Let me try to describe the quality of what's going to be said, because I think it matters as much as the content itself. What's coming is not a rumor, not gossip, not the kind of secondhand, third-hand, passed through several sets of interpretation information that arrives distorted and unreliable. What this person carries is something they have direct knowledge of, something they witnessed or were part of or were told in a context that gave them access to the real version rather than a constructed one. The real version of something you've been given a different version of. I want to stay with that for a moment because the specific shape of what's coming matters. This is not entirely new information in the sense that it arrives from nowhere. Some part of what you're going to hear tomorrow when you feel it land in your body before your mind has finished processing the words is going to have the quality of something recognized rather than something truly new. A piece that you didn't have before, but that completes a shape you've been staring at from the wrong angle. The kind of information that doesn't add something so much as it clarifies everything that was already there. That click of recognition, that half second where something settles into place that had been suspended just outside of alignment, that's the feeling I want you to watch for tomorrow. Because in that half second, your instincts are going to be correct. What you feel in your body in the instant of recognition is the truth. And there may be a subsequent impulse, very Virgo, very familiar, to immediately audit that recognition, to subject it to scrutiny before accepting it, to find the potential flaws in the source or the logic before you let yourself fully receive what's been said. For once, let the recognition come first. There's something about the phrase listen carefully in this title that I want to unpack because I think it's doing more work than it might initially appear to be doing. Listening carefully is different from hearing accurately. You can hear every word someone says, register them, record them, replay them without listening carefully to what those words are doing, without tracking the thing underneath the thing, without attending to the quality of what's being communicated alongside its content, the feeling in the air around it, the way the person delivering it seems to be sitting with the weight of it. The gaps between sentences where something important is also being expressed without words. What's coming tomorrow is going to have layers. The spoken version, the actual words are going to be significant on their own. But there's a subtext, a quality, an emotional register running underneath the explicit content that carries its own information about what this person knows that they're not quite saying, about how long they've been sitting with this, about what it cost them to decide to bring it to you. Listen to all of it, not just the part you can quote back afterward. And there's another dimension to careful listening that I want to name, which is the listening you'll need to do to yourself in the aftermath. Because what this information triggers in you, the feelings it surfaces, the memories it recontextualizes, the decisions it suddenly reframes, that interior response is also going to be saying something true, something important, something that in the rush of processing external information you might run past without catching. Slow down for your own response. It knows things. Hold on. Something is pressing in that I almost moved past and I need to stay with it. There's a decision, something you've been either actively deliberating or passively deferring, something that has been in the background of your recent weeks as an unresolved question, and what arrives tomorrow is going to directly affect the terms of that decision, not by making it for you, not by eliminating the choosing, but by changing the information available to you when you choose, by revealing something about the landscape of the decision that was not visible from where you were standing before. The decision is not going to look the same after tomorrow as it does today. I want to be careful here about what I'm saying because I don't want this to create a kind of anxious scanning of your circumstances, a hypervigilance toward every interaction tomorrow in case this is the one. That kind of vigilance actually makes genuine listening harder because it replaces presence with anticipation. What I'd offer instead is this: go about your day tomorrow as yourself. Be present in the ordinary way. Don't engineer encounters or force conversations or create opportunities for something to be revealed. The channel through which this arrives does not need your help opening. It's already open. The person who carries this is already in motion toward you, in whatever way that motion is going to manifest. And your job is simply to be actually there when they arrive, fully there, not managing the conversation from the moment it starts, not already 3 steps ahead into what you're going to do with the information. Just there, listening carefully, the way the title instructs. Let me look at what the information itself is going to ask of you, because I think that's the most important preparation I can offer. Whatever you hear tomorrow, there will be a first response and a real response. And for you, Virgo, these rarely arrive at the same time. The first response is going to be whatever your most immediate, protective, least examined layer produces. It might be disbelief. It might be a reflexive minimization of the significance of what you've just been told, because the significance is large enough that it's easier to initially reduce it than to sit with its full size. It might be an immediate forward movement into what do I do now that skips the feeling of what this means entirely. It might be something that looks like calm from the outside, but that is actually the particular stillness of someone who has received something enormous and hasn't yet processed it. All of those first responses are understandable. None of them are the real response. The real response is going to need some time and some privacy and some willingness to simply be in what you've just learned before you do anything with it, before you tell anyone, before you form a plan, before you decide what this means for the situation or the person or the decision. It reframes. Give yourself that time. It's not available in unlimited quantities. Life continues. Other people have needs. The world doesn't pause for your interior processing, but claim whatever portion of it you can. Even an hour, even 30 minutes of genuine stillness where you let what you've been told settle into its real shape rather than the shape your first response assigned it. What you're going to discover in that stillness is that you already know what this means, that some part of you has known or has been ready to know for longer than you realized, that the information arriving tomorrow is meeting something inside you that was waiting for exactly this piece without having been able to name what it was waiting for. Trust what you find in the stillness. I want to say something about the person delivering this because they deserve a moment in this reading, even though they're not the central figure of it. What they're doing takes something. I don't know their specific reasons, their specific relationship to you or to the situation or to the information they're carrying. But the fact of bringing something forward, the decision to speak rather than continue to hold what they know in silence, is not a frictionless choice for anyone. People sit on things. People weigh the cost of disclosure against the cost of continued silence, and they make calculations that are not always purely about truth-telling, because purely abstract truth-telling is easier in theory than in the actual landscape of relationships and loyalties and consequences. This person has tipped toward telling you. That means something. It means they've decided, however they arrived at it, that you need to know, that your knowing matters more than whatever the cost of the telling is. That's a form of care. even if it doesn't arrive in a comfortable package. Receive it as such, not with uncritical gratitude that bypasses your own assessment of what you're hearing, but with the acknowledgement that someone is extending themselves on your behalf by doing this, and that matters regardless of the complexity of what they're bringing. There's one more dimension of this reading that I want to address because it keeps pressing at me, and I think skipping it would be a form of dishonesty. What you're going to hear tomorrow is going to change something, not everything. I'm not describing a total upheaval, a complete inversion of your circumstances, but something specific and significant is going to shift. A relationship, possibly, your understanding of a situation, your sense of where you actually stand in something you perhaps thought you understood, the terms of a decision you're facing, the accuracy of a story you've been told and have been organizing your responses around. That shift is going to produce feelings that exist in more than one register simultaneously. There may be relief in it, the particular relief of having a suspicion confirmed, of the ground finally being solid, even if what the solid ground reveals is not entirely comfortable. There may be anger, depending on what the information is and what it implies about choices that were made or things that were withheld. There may be something closer to grief, the mourning of a version of things that has to be updated, even when the updated version is more accurate. These feelings are not going to be in conflict, even though they seem like they should be. They are all accurate responses to the same complex reality. You do not have to resolve them into a single, consistent emotional position before you're allowed to act. You are allowed to feel several true things at once. That's actually what careful listening requires in the aftermath, the willingness to let the complexity of your own response be as honest as the complexity of what you received. Tomorrow exists already in some sense. The person who is going to speak to you has already made the decision to speak. The words are already formed or forming in whatever way things form before they're said. The information is already on its way to you through the ordinary channels of a day that will look, until the moment it happens, entirely unremarkable. Be in that day. Be actually in it, present in the specific Virgo way that you are capable of being present when you allow yourself, which is completely with full awareness of what's happening around you, noticing what others miss. That quality of attention, which is genuinely one of your most extraordinary capacities, is exactly what this moment is going to need from you. You will know the moment when it comes. Your body will know before your mind does, in that familiar way. There will be a shift in the quality of a conversation, or a pause that has a different weight than ordinary pauses, or a beginning sentence that carries more gravity than its first words suggest. Something will signal to you that this is the moment. When that signal comes, listen, not just with your ears, with the whole of your considerable awareness, with the part of you that has been making accurate assessments of situations your entire life, often before you could justify them, often despite contrary evidence, often in the face of other people's very confident reassurances that everything was fine. That part of you knew something was coming. It was right. Listen carefully. The comments are where I want to hear something specific today, not whether the reading resonated in general. Tell me about the 4 a.m. quality of awareness I described at the start, the wide awake kind, when what you've been successfully not hearing during the day finally gets through. Have you been having that kind of awareness recently? Has something been trying to surface that the business of your days keeps interrupting? Because I think for some of you, this reading is landing on top of something that's already been pressing for attention for a while. Tell me if that's true. And tomorrow after it happens, I want you to come back and tell me. I'll be here